Here we go again, hardly containing our excitement after a huge non-event week in the trade period, and it's episode 3 of the postseason, and I'll stammer through all that and hand you over to Pete. How you going, Peter?
Mate, have you got a glass of Wild Turkey Rare Breed, as I have, sitting here next to me? Sounds like it. Welcome, everybody, to the Adelaide Crowcast. Great to have you all with us. Huge week in AFL football, of course, the trade week, or second week of the trade period, I should say, and just a mass of stuff going on. So it's great to have you all with us. Accompanying me with my glass of Rare Breed and Coke, of course, is the usual panel. Nikki, Dan, Macca and Fiend. How are we, everyone?
Good, thanks.
Very
Doing
well,
okay.
yeah.
Good to have you all with us. And don't forget, anybody that wants to jump on and give us a message or chuck us a tweet or do whatever, we can talk about anything you want to talk about. But I imagine most of the night we'll be talking about the AFL trade week. Lots of news to get through. So I'll hand you over to Nikki for the Nikki's News.
Now, do we actually have music, Phoenix?
Yeah, I just played it. Didn't you hear it?
No, not
we're
hearing
not.
it at all.
Oh, that's good.
That's why I'm a little worried.
Didn't hear
They
the
all-
opening.
There was
They
no
all
intro
heard it.
music either.
No, they all heard it.
Oh, there we go. Well, I'll actually get a little something out of the way very quickly. I'm pretty sure we might talk about this a little bit later, further down a couple of podcasts but the Swiss court came back and basically told Essendon to suck it up, princess, and the CAS standings stand, so they now are officially drug cheats. The AFL are definitely going to feature in the cock-wobbling numbnut of the week nominations for their stupidity in asking Cochin and Sam Mitchell to actually make a presentation as to whether Job should keep his Brownlow or not. Just a little something. AFL, your medal is actually for the fairest and best. Fairest is actually listed first. If you're convicted of drug in that year, you're not the fairest. Take his frickin' Brownlow away. Simple as that.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Nick.
I can't believe they had to wait another month and a half before they could have a meeting to decide these things.
Well, it's obvious that it has to go because they're operating under WADA rules at the moment, and WADA rules automatically disqualifies him from being the winner.
But they don't want to make that decision. They want Job to do it. They want somebody else to do it. They don't want to make the decision, and they never have from the start. It's just pathetic.
It's extremely bad leadership. I mean, the decision should have already been made contingent on the CAS ruling. It should have either been, all right, if they come back and chuck it out, then he loses it. He keeps it, and if they don't uphold the appeal, then he loses it. Simple. They should have made this bloody thing back in wherever it was.
The person who is reflected worse, or the worst in all of this, is Watson himself. The fact of the matter is that he should have come and handed in the medal as soon as that decision was made. He should have had the good grace to come in and hand the medal back. He knows the rules, and the fact that he's still sitting on that and forcing them to make a decision is an absolute disgrace and a slur on his character as far as I'm concerned. And also, I agree, Nikki, it was absolutely disgraceful to actually write a letter and ask Cochin and Mitchell to explain their position. Their position is very simple. They came second.
Yep.
You know, if somebody's in a race, if you're in a running race and whoever comes first is disqualified for drug cheating, you don't ask for the person that ran second or third to be writing applications justifying why they win the race. They win because they were second, and the person that was first was disqualified. It's simple. It's automatic.
And it's so indicative of the AFL's desire to massage outcomes, you know. I mean, they just make things up on the fly, and like you say, Peter, it's a very simple equation. You know, he
Massage
hasn't
is a perfect
won.
word.
He has not won, and it's as simple as that. And so he doesn't get the medal. It's like saying we could make a case for saying, well, you know, Sloaney's if Sloaney won it this year and he was ineligible, well, you know, it wasn't an intentional hit, so maybe he should get it anyway. You know, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I agree totally with everything that's been said. But the other thing, though, is does it go down in history as a year in which nobody won the medal, or do you elevate the two guys that ran second? My personal opinion.
You elevate.
You elevate.
Well, my personal opinion is different. I would like to see it recorded as a no winner, because that draws attention to the fact that the person that won it that year was disqualified for cheating.
No, I couldn't disagree with you more, Macca. You know, the two guys, Mitchell and Cochin, they've won that medal fair and square, because the guy who got more votes than they did was a cheat, and so they deserve that medal.
There could be a little bit of a slightly different argument there, Peter, because if you actually take out all of the games against Essendon, if you null and void their games and anybody who got votes during those games, take them out.
Scott
Thompson actually wins.
And I reckon, if you look at any other sport, Olympic sport, results are struck off, right? So all the Tour de France's that Lance Armstrong competed in, he's struck off the record.
To be fair, one of them they actually didn't give a winner that year, but they were pretty damn sure that almost the entire peloton was on drugs.
Yeah.
So there's 1 year that actually does what Macca has actually suggested here.
Yeah.
Has that 1 year.
And Dustin Fletcher shouldn't be a 400-game player.
No.
And Joe Watson should not be a Brownlow medalist. And the games recorded in that season, and you can't do it now in terms of the home and away results, because it's done and dusted. But in terms of those games, they should be struck out. And as you say, Nikki, Scott Thompson wins the Brownlow on that basis. And to me, that's the most equitable outcome.
And it's,
that won't go down well.
No, look, it's a very good argument, and for that very reason, because you've got confusing arguments, that's why I'd have no winner for that particular year.
Well, someone's got to win it, Macca, because why should everyone else be disadvantaged because one team decided to cheat?
Yes, but do you go down your argument or do you go down Pete's argument?
Well, of course you go down my argument, because it's right.
Why did I not anticipate that?
You walked right into that one, mate.
Macca, you are so going to cop it tonight. Or just already. You're kind of behind the 8 ball. You should probably give up and concede already.
Well, the guy who I'm disagreeing with has got the button.
Very true. Don't remind him of that. But interestingly, what I thought this could lead into is that the fact, and your word is perfect there, Phoenix, of massage, is that the AFL, there's been some very interesting trades that have occurred, particularly with one of them being Sam Mitchell and now Jordan Lewis, for very, very, I was going to say high draft picks, but they're in the high numbers, so they're actually a low draft pick. Kind of get confusing how we talk about them in that way. But the fact that they actually passed the sniff test, the integrity test for the AFL, but they are investigating the Vickery free agency one. They've asked both Richmond and Hawthorn to provide some further information.
Don't forget also the pick swap between Hawthorn and St Kilda.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Vickery one is interesting because initially Hawthorn put out a press release saying that he was on a 3-year deal, and then they quickly amended that to a 2-year. That's what's brought all that up.
Yes.
And that is draft tampering.
Yep.
Well, it is, and because it directly impacts the compensation that Richmond get. And, if Richmond and Hawthorn have come to an arrangement that leaves Richmond in a better position from a compensation point of view, then absolutely it's draft tampering. And why there is no hint of an investigation from the AFL is beyond me. But the issue with these Masters fire sale Hawthorn players that's been going on, it's not that anyone's actually done anything wrong, but it's just that if we are operating in a system of equality, then trades need to have an intrinsic value, and you can't. It's not an open market. It's a managed market. The whole competition is managed based on equalisation, and you can't have a system where you call the trade period open market when the rest of the system isn't. So They weren't traded for value, in my opinion.
No.
It's not fair value what they were traded for, and to me, it needs to be looked. It won't get looked at, but to me, it needs to be looked at.
I reckon it's got to go further than that. I think it has to be reversed and a market value set, and that's what the teams either have to pay or don't pay, because the teams that are receiving players for the cost of a sneeze, they're actually being very, very advantaged by a situation whereas no other team is. I believe that's draft tampering.
Now, was Mitchell a 2 or 3 year deal?
2.
So he's a 2, and Lewis is a 3 year deal. Being picked,
Mitchell's only 1 year plus coaching.
Are you sure it's only 1, or is it?
I think it was only 1 year, 1 coaching.
Yeah, 1 and 1, I think.
It's 1 year playing with the option to play on if he decides, or they decide to do it.
Because he definitely, in his exit interviews, his interviews in the media, he did mention the fact that, at the end of next season he'll see, and if he's still wanting to run around, then he's got that option to run around. So again, I'd take that as a 2-year deal, or at least a one with a trigger or an option.
With a trigger, which means in the contract it's that the AFL would have seen what the offer was in terms of getting that trigger going for the second year.
The simple fact of the matter is that you're talking about number 1 and number 2 in Hawthorn's best and fairest, going for a 4th round pick swap and essentially a 4th rounder. What was it? Pick bloody 58 or 88
one
or
was
something.
61, I think, and 80? Oh, no. One was 61, I was pretty sure.
Moved up about 7 or 8 spots in the draft.
Yeah, it's a packet of chips, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's not a lot at all.
And here we are haggling over first rounders and all that for Bryce Gibbs, who's, a couple of years younger, but in terms of standard and achievements and ranking in the game, if you equal all that out, then it should be a similar value, really.
Totally agree, and that's why I don't think that these giveaways should be allowed.
I just think if you're gonna be operating in the system that we're operating in, which is all about equalisation, then they need a system of valuing players so that there can't be this ridiculous situation of low-balling trades. A guy like Sam Mitchell or Bryce Gibbs or, a Tom Mitchell for that matter, they should be graded within a band, and it can be a reasonably broad band that gives you room to move, but it should be able to differentiate between a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick.
I'd support that, yep.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Shit, I agree with Phoenix.
Well, while we've got
Let's just savour the moment for a minute, Macca.
While we've got everybody agreeing and while we're sort of hedging around the trade issue, shall we dive into the biggest issue certainly for the Crows, and obviously that being our trade period and the Bryce Gibbs affair. What are our thoughts, particularly with news seemingly filtering out tonight? I noticed that Carlton fanboy Sam McClure had as 2 first-round draft picks, conveniently left out the fact that there would be something in return. How do we feel about 2 first-round picks with a 2017 second coming back?
Too much.
Yeah, I think a little bit too much.
I'm not happy with it. I don't think there should be more than 1 first-rounder involved, and I'm not even happy with anything coming along with that, to be honest.
But if the reality is that all we do is slide 6 or 7 spots next year. Now, it's not guaranteed; it's a risk, of course. But I'd say that it's a greater chance than not that all we do is slide 6 or 7 spots next year in the draft. And don't forget also that I would imagine we've most likely identified Jackson Edwards as a potential first-round draft pick, who we would be able to acquire under the father-son potentially. So that may well be impacting on our thinking as well.
And that if he gets nominated in the 5 or 6 picks before our pick, we'll still have the currency to be able to match it.
Yeah, because the 20% discount.
And the other thing, if we use 2 first-round draft picks in a row, doesn't that mean that we can't use a first-round draft pick for a trade for the next 2 years after that?
Yeah.
You have to use at least 2 first-round picks in a 4-year period, and I've tried to have have it confirmed by Patrick Keane, but I've not received a response. That because we used 2 last year, whether that counts for the 2 in the 4-year period, but I don't know yet.
I don't think it does, Danos. I think you could use 10 first-round picks in 1 year and still be obliged to use another first-round pick in the remaining 3 years of that 4-year rolling period. That's the way I read it. Because I agree with you, it's a little bit confusing, but that's the way I read it.
Because how does that cover what Port's doing?
Yeah, well, they haven't used it. Scorpus put something up. They haven't used a first-round pick for
4 years, I think it is.
Or 5 years or something ridiculous. I mean, the rule's only been in place for the last 2.
Yeah,
well, top-notch list management there.
Certainly the last 3.
Look, I think the issue is that you can't... If they're making a judgment on giving away picks or trading picks on the basis of having enough points for Jackson, that's a pretty big gamble because a lot can happen to a 16-year-old kid in 12 months. He could do a knee, his form could drop off, all sorts of things. And to be... I understand trying to position ourselves to get him, but to make trades on the basis that he will be of a certain value is pretty speculative in my view.
Yeah, but it's more about how much they're asking, in the sense that if you pay 2 first round picks and get a second round pick back, to me, I just think it's too much to pay for a rising 28-year-old who, while he's a good footballer, he wouldn't be regarded in the top 20, 30?
Yeah, I'd say he'd be inside the top 50, but outside the top 20, I reckon.
Now, I'm trying to remember, do we actually have a second round pick next year?
Yeah,
No.
we do.
Not at the moment.
Why wouldn't
Yeah.
we?
Oh, yes, we do. We do.
Next year we do.
Not this year.
Yeah, we had our pants pulled down last year getting Kirtley Hampton for a second round pick, but I think we've got one for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got a bigger
remember.
issue. I've got a bigger issue with this whole thing. My personal view is I don't mind getting Gibbs, but Gibbs on his own is not going to make any difference at all. And if we're only going to get Gibbs, then I'd rather keep the first rounder, to be perfectly frank.
Just to go back a few comments, I've just got the AFL website article open, which says afl.com.au confirmed with the AFL that as long as a club has 2 first-round picks in a 4-year period, they comply with the rules surrounding future first-round draft picks. Then it goes a little bit further on to say, although Melbourne is one of 3 clubs without a first-round draft pick this season, it would be able to confidently trade a future first-round pick if it wanted to secure a highly rated player. It chose Clayton Oliver and Sam Wiedemann in the first round last season, trading out this year's future pick in a deal with Gold Coast. Although Melbourne would be unlikely to trade its 2017 first-round draft pick in this trade period, it does not have to make 2 first-round draft picks until the end of 2019.
So it's basically picks, not picks per year.
Correct. So we've covered our 4-year period with the 2 last year.
I'll just go back to my point. Unless we get Rockcliffe, it's pointless getting Gibbs, in my view.
I'm with you 100%. 100%.
Nikki, you got to be disappointed. Macca and I keep agreeing, and you thought it was going to be World War
I
III
know.
tonight.
Oh my
Well,
god.
I'm happy to jump in and disagree with that because I really can't see your logic by saying we've got a player the quality of Gibbs, and I think that he's generally been underrated because he has been playing for essentially a bottom side. He has in his 10 years at Carlton 7 times in the top 5 BNF, and I've had some idiots saying, he's had no competition. Well, that was with players like Chris Judd who won 3, Murphy, Cripps. So there's some quality around that he's had those top 5 finishes. And the reality is that as well as I do, is that players from bottom teams struggle to get into All-Australian teams, generally speaking, and they also struggle to rack up Brownlow votes. Now, I know you'll always find an exception to that rule, but generally speaking, the All-Australian gongs go to the most successful teams. Now, He's been in a rubbish team for quite a while. Some of his numbers last year or last season were astonishing, where he put Carlton on his back. I mean, the game against Geelong, he's put his team on his back and taken them to a win. And he almost dragged them over the line against Sydney up at the SCG as well, with just extraordinary statistics. So I think he's been underrated, and I don't see the logic at all of saying, well, here's a really high quality player who will add to our midfield, and you're saying, well, if we can't get two, then sorry, I don't want one. It sounds like a bit like a spoilt child to me. I want both, or you can get stuff.
No, it's not about being a spoilt child. It's about having a plan, Pete. And the plan seems to be to make hay while the sun shines. And we've identified, every man and his dog has identified our midfield deficiencies. But I think most people will agree that we're more than one midfielder short in that equation. So there's two ways you can go, and we've discussed this, periodically over the last few weeks, whether, it's better to go to the draft to try and pick up that talent, or whether it's better to sell off those draft picks to get some immediate results. Now, in terms of immediate results, I don't know whether Gibbs is the sole difference between us making a semi-final and us making a grand final. And my personal view is that he's not.
Well, see, and that's where I agree with you, because if you have a look at our team, our forward line is number one in the competition. If you look at our back line, it's very high up in terms of its status. So the one weakness we have is in the midfield, and we're going to lose Thompson. Lyons looks like going to the Gold Coast, and if we only put Gibbs in, I just don't think that's quite enough, and that's not having a crack at Gibbs. If you put Gibbs and Rockcliffe in there, I think you've got the appropriate formula that might win the flag next year, and that's what we should be after, and we should be after that at all costs.
Well, and the argument is, Macca, too, that if you're going to just get Gibbs, then I don't think you want to be giving Lyons away. And if you don't give Lyons away, then all of a sudden we're in the third round as our first pick. So it really messes with your trading and draft strategies, because you're kind of having a bit each way. You either go hard in the trade period and get a couple, or you preserve your picks and try to improve your draft position, which is why you would get rid of Jared Lyons, by not selling 13 for Gibbs and having a first and second round pick. As it stands, if we don't get two, then we're kind of having a bet each way, and I don't think it's an effective list management strategy at all.
Obviously, one player is not going to make a difference, and I'd argue that two players don't make a difference either. In a 22-person team, quite obviously, you've got to get natural improvement. I mean, I think we've spoken about this before. Is that really the key in all this is Brad Crouch? He's the one. His level of improvement. If he gets to the standard that he can get to, which is, there's no doubt in my mind that he could reach all Australian standard if he plays to his potential. Sloan obviously is there. Gibbs is there. So all of a sudden, in your midfield, you've got three guys that are of all Australian standard, and I think that really does make a difference.
But chuck in Rockcliffe and you got four.
Oh well, of course, Macca. Of course, if you'd rather have two than one, but I can't see the logic in saying, well, if you can't get two, have none. And so, we walk away from trade period without having improved our midfield at all. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
No, I don't agree with Phoenix on that point of having none. I'm just saying that if you only get the one...
That's what you agreed with him before. You said that you agreed with him that if we can't get both, then we keep 13 and go to the draft.
I agree with him when he said that the job is not done and it's incomplete.
No, I didn't say that, Macca. I said two or none. I was pretty implicit on that.
No, well, I don't.
Well, given that this year's draft is midfielder heavy, and given that we're going to get, highly likely to get a midfielder who can make an impact within the next 2 or 3 years, if you're going to get Gibbs and give away Jared Lyons and not bring anything else into that midfield, then you've got a class upgrade on Lyons, but I still feel that we're short in terms of our personnel. And if you're trying to preserve next year's first for Jackson Edwards, who's also going to take a couple of years, obviously, to come on, then what are you actually trying to achieve here? It seems like we've got a foot in either camp. We don't want to go back and do a bit of a refit of our midfield from the bottom up because we want to, take advantage of our strong forward line and defence. But we're not going hard enough either way. We've only made one play that we know of for Gibbs, and as PJ points out on the chat, that there is strong talk, despite what we've heard around the traps, there is strong talk that we've got absolutely no interest in Rockcliffe, which means that Gibbs is the only midfielder we're looking to bring in. Now, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, I agree with you about the fact that doesn't make a lot of sense, but I must have misunderstood because I wasn't thinking that if we could only get Gibbs, don't do it. I definitely want to do the Gibbs trade, but I don't think that in itself will satisfy our requirements. I still think we need one more. That's what I was getting at.
Sorry, my apologies, Mac. You must have obviously misunderstood what Phoenix said, so I do apologise for that. No, sorry, Dan, on you go.
The big problem is that if we then go ahead and trade out our first picks for this year and next year, then we only get Gibbs in. We're not, and as Phoenix has been saying, we're not actually strengthening our best 22. We're almost making it weaker because we're still relying on that 2021-22 player, the Douglas McKay types, who don't make our team better or stronger.
Well, no, as part of the strategy for next year, those guys have got to go, obviously, and there's got to be a push up from underneath. So guys like Harry Wigg, guys like that who can come up and take a midfield spot. Miller is another one that's got to, so these guys have got to come up and claim spots. Riley Knight, as I think of them. So there's got to be a push from underneath for those guys to come up. There's got to be improvement in the likes of Brad Crouch in particular. Spotlight is right on him, in my opinion. And then you add someone like Gibbs as an experienced midfielder to that midfield mix. So it can't just be one component. There's got to be 3 or 4 things that have got to happen for us to take that next step.
And yet, at this point, it only seems like we've got Gibbs in the works.
Well, no, those other guys we've got on our list, and so I'm sure there's an expectation that those guys are going to push up, and also the improvement from the guys that we've got, as I said, with Brad Crouch. So you can't, you're not going to go to trade period and pick up half a dozen midfielders. That doesn't work. If you can get one high quality, then that's great. And then you want natural improvement, and also you want some guys to push up from your reserves, which I think will happen. So that's got to be the strategy. But look, hopefully, we all hope that there's another midfielder in the mix. But if there's not, it doesn't mean that the trade period's been a fail at all. If you can get someone of Gibbs' quality, then I think that's a great success. But we also need to keep in that second round.
Yeah, but Pete, who else is there apart from Rockcliffe? And you're saying that you're hearing we're not interested in Rockcliffe, which I find so hard to believe when you can buy the guy at about half price at the moment.
No, we can't. That's the problem, Macca, is that, yes, we could probably use a low pick and Brisbane would be happy with that, but his manager and him are overinflating his price to ridiculousness. Nobody is interested. He's going to be stuck at Brisbane where they don't want him, where he now doesn't want to be, because he thinks he's worth more than what he actually is. So we can't get him for a low price, Macca, until he lowers his salary.
But he's not going to, because why would you? Yeah. I mean, he's got a back-ended deal that reportedly is for $800,000 next year. And then he hits the free agency market. Now, he can stay at Brisbane. Who cares about how acrimonious the situation is? He can stay at Brisbane and earn his $800,000.
And get $800,000.
Play well enough to make sure that he gets picked up under free agency. So, unfortunately, his manager is right in saying, well, you're going to have to come to the party because you get, irrespective of what Brisbane is willing to take for him, Tom was going to be earning $800,000 next year, and why should he undercut himself?
And the other thing you need to look at is what's on offer this trade period. Who have we seen actually go and who's actually rumoured to be moving? You've got Tom Mitchell, you've got O'Meara, and you've got Prestia. You've got 3 of the like really highly rated, even if they can't get on the park, junior midfielders coming through. Who's going to be interested in Rockcliffe for the same price when he's older, when you can get one of those younger ones?
So, I mean, I haven't heard that. Personally, everything that I heard going into the trade period was that we were into Rockcliffe. Now, that may have changed. It was always the case that it was subject to salary. Now, if he has put ridiculous salary demands on himself, well then we've got to, you've got to let him go. And you say, well, we're not going to pay for, over the odds for someone like that. And you walk away with a high quality player, and you add into your mix as a first 22 player. And you know what? I'd give short odds that he'll probably be our top 5 BNF as well. He's that good a player. So he will make a difference. He will certainly help. But you can't pull in players that are impossible to get, whether either they don't want to come to your club or their salary demands are out of reach.
Yeah, and the interesting one is Hanley, that's going from Brisbane to Gold Coast. I would have thought he was absolutely the perfect player for what we were looking for.
But if he's not interested in moving
he did want
further away down to us, if he's happy staying in Queensland.
I totally disagree. Sorry, Macca, to disagree with you again, but I totally disagree with him being the kind of player that we want. Now, in that game against Sydney at the SCG, what was the startling or the stark issue and problem that we had in the first quarter?
Inside strength.
Could not get our hands on the football at all. Now, do you know offhand Gibbs's stats in his last game against Sydney at the SCG? I mean, I can tell you just off the top of my head. He had 31 possessions, 15 contested, had 11 tackles, he had 7 clearances, and he had 8 inside 50s. Now, do you think that might have helped? And you're not going to get those. You're not going to get those
just a little bit.
You're not going to get those stats, out of guys like Hanley who are soft cocks on the outside. And also, I mean, what was the other midfield that gave us an absolute bollocksing twice through the year? It was the Dangerwood combo, wasn't it? We got absolutely slaughtered. Do you want to know Gibbsy's what he got in that game against Dangerfield and Selwood? He got 34 possessions, 9 tackles, and 8 clearances. So he
was tagging Dangerfield.
And he was tagging Dangerfield. He torched him. If you look at the inside player ratings, the word that they used in that was that Gibbs torched Dangerfield that day, and that's why Carlton won. Now, he's obviously had his inconsistencies, but I think in a better team, he'll be more recognised for the work that he's doing. And I also think that it's a huge mistake to believe that Gibbs is some kind of a, just an outside sort of, pretty ball user, which he can do. His work this year was at the coalface and in hard and a big body, in tough, and getting his hands on the football. And in my respectful opinion, I think that was the thing that we lacked the most in the finals.
Well, yes, we did, but during the course of the year, we probably broke even most games. But I thought one thing that is glaringly obvious is that we don't have an outside mid. In fact, when we have a contested ball situation, what we find is normally all of our midfielders go into the contest and nobody stays out, and that's where we get caught so often.
Well, I think that's fair. That's fair comment, Macca. But I think that we've already invested in that type of player. We've got, last year we traded, in my opinion, over the odds for players like Seedsman and Hampton and these kind of guys. Menzel, another one. These are all second rounders.
Yeah, but they're not guys. But they're not guys you have in the middle.
Hampton is.
Well, Hampton you do,
and Menzel's been trained.
Absolutely, and so you're looking at these guys, and certainly Seedsman. So you're looking at these guys to take, that's where we've invested. We've invested in those guys, and Atkins we've invested games into. So these are the guys that have got to step up in that aspect of the game.
Yeah, well, Hampton I like as a player, and I think he's going to be a good player for us. But all his games with GWS have been played either as a forward, where he started off, or a half-back flanker where he finished up. So
because he can't get into that midfield.
But I think he's a very versatile player, and I think you probably could put him in for bursts into the midfield. But
Macca,
yes,
I'm going to smack you down now.
Oh, Nikki, just get in. Are you in the queue?
We played him towards the end of the year through the midfield. Yes, he was played off the half back line, but he very much roamed forward, particularly like the Smith and the Laird, that we do that. But we also did play him on the wing. He would line up on the wing at certain centre bounces. Menzel lines up on the wing, and he's actually done that from the start of the year in the SANFL. That actually did occur. I'm actually going to raise a point that whilst Peter talked about Wiggy, etc. coming through, I think there's somebody else we may be elevating in Greenwood.
No, see, I think you're incredibly optimistic about Hugh Greenwood, and I do agree that he looks great and he's got all the tools and all that sort of stuff. But he's coming from so far back, Nick, and
he is.
He's a bonus.
The improvement he made this year in leaps and bounds was amazing.
At SANFL level.
Yeah, at SANFL level, but from the start to the end of the year, and in the finals, in the SANFL finals, against some pretty decent midfields, yes, I know it is at that level, he was playing in the middle, and he was more than holding his own, and he's actually that very interesting inside-outside combination that he can play on the outside if he has to, but he can also go in and get his own ball. But he's just got those. He's got those Bontempelli attributes. He's the same size.
Yeah, but he's 2 years away if he's going to do it. He needs to build more of an engine. Even if they elevate him and give him a run, he has not got the engine yet to be a fully fledged
not
midfielder.
Consistent.
No,
but I think he may actually. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we do elevate him.
I'd be disappointed if we don't, because I reckon, on what I saw in the finals, I think he showed more promise than Harry Week.
But here's the point. Again, you're talking about a player with a couple of years' development in him, and this has been my point all along. You either go hard or you do a refit, and Hugh Greenwood would certainly be a candidate for refitting that midfield. But if you're talking about immediate success, then Hugh Greenwood isn't in the conversation. And, you know, Pete makes some really good points about Gibbs. But I don't think in that game against Sydney, in the semi, in that game against West Coast when they torched us, even in the game earlier in the season when we beat GWS, when they got on top of us in the midfield, we weren't even close. We weren't on the same park as GWS when they came at us in the last quarter. It was just well and good that we were so far in front. One player is not going to fix our midfield. And
no, and I don't think anyone
I would be really disappointed if we don't make a play for Rockcliffe, because to me, I think the combination of Gibbs and Rockcliffe gives our midfield something that we've lacked for a long time, because at the moment we're too easily nullified. Teams know that you just sit on Sloaney and that's basically us done. So we need a couple of players that are not only going to go in and get the ball in the contest, but are also going to need attention, so that Sloaney can go free, or Gibbs can go free, or Rocky can go free, or Brad Crouch if he comes up. We need enough guns in there so that we're not as easily nullified as we currently are, and having Gibbs in there doesn't cover it, and it smacks of a haphazard strategy. If he's the only midfielder we get.
So Phoenix, how do we cross the salary barrier with Rockcliffe then?
Well, I think the equation is basically how much do we want to pay, and how much is Brisbane willing to keep on their TPP, and whatever that equation is, that then dovetails into what we offer in terms of trade. You know, so maybe at the moment, you know, initially he was touted as requiring a first rounder to get out of there. Now, I would say that if we were to take his whole salary for next year, then we could get away with a second rounder. If we were to say, Brisbane, you need to pay 200,000 of this, then it might still take a late first rounder or something in the second round with a player, perhaps. You know, I think that's the equation. I don't think it's just a straight what's Tom Rockcliffe worth. I think the equation includes who's going to take what part of his salary, and I think we've got some flexibility in that regard.
I think that the bigger problem is that he still wants his next contract to be around that same 800k mark. And
Yeah, but see,
nobody's willing to pay that.
I don't think that's going to happen. My view, or my take on it, is that it's very much about he doesn't want to drop 250k next year, because even as a free agent, he's not going to get 800k next year unless he wins the Brownlow.
He won't get it at Brisbane, and he won't get it anywhere else. But the problem is being able to convince him in the next 36 hours that he's not going to get it anywhere, and that he's going to get the best opportunity for a premiership at Adelaide.
Well, hopefully the lack of interest, because he's clearly been put on the table. Hopefully the lack of interest might convince him that he's not on 800k anywhere else, and that he's struck a bit of a windfall up there at Brisbane, because he wasn't there. I think Daniel Rich was on something ridiculous as well up there.
Rich and Beams are on more than him.
They have to make their 95% of $10 million or whatever it is anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he's got to, and his manager probably more importantly has got to recognise that for what it is. And I think had a few clubs been in the race for him, he could have had a bit of an auction on his salary. But as it stands, the way things have panned out for him in this trade period, I think as long as he gets his 800,000 this year somehow,
next year,
then I think a $600,000 salary after that would be a fair and reasonable outcome for him.
Which is what everyone expects it to be anyway. But perhaps the lack of interest on Rockcliffe is because there's already some sort of backroom word that he's going somewhere else for something anyway. That'd be nice.
Maybe. That is a possibility. But either way, I mean, just because he wants to go, he hasn't come out and nominated Adelaide. So if Collingwood came in and said, well, we'll pay you 800 over 4 years, I'm sure he'd go, well, maybe I'll go there then. So he hasn't
he'll just go where the money is for sure. But I just can't agree that. Look, don't get me wrong. I absolutely hope that we pursue him, and I hope that we pursue any midfielder that we can possibly get to the club for next year. But I can't see the logic in saying that there's no point in getting Bryce Gibbs, because to me there is. He's an excellent player. And I think that. I'm certainly not saying that he's everything. He will help, but there's also then got to be a push-up from some of the players who perform well in the reserves, and there's also got to be some natural improvement from some of the younger guys who did play A-grade this year, as in Brad and Matt Crouch.
Now, Pete, you're a real G for Gibbsy, and I can understand why, but what are you prepared to pay and what are you prepared to give up?
I wasn't unhappy with the thought that we give our first and then what should really not amount to anything more than a downgrade of the first next year. I think that they're still rebuilding. They don't expect to be challenging for another 2 to 3 years based upon their list strategy, and so I would imagine that we'll also challenge next year, particularly once we get Gibbs. It'll be a huge swing, them losing him and us getting him. And so I think that, you're probably, if we end up with, finishing third or fourth and they end up finishing, 15th, 16th, you're probably looking at, I don't know, just off the top of my head, maybe a 7 or 8 position downgrade in your first round pick.
Can I just pull you up there, really. Pete?
Yeah.
So you've just basically admitted that a reasonable outcome getting Gibbs is that we'll finish third or fourth next year. What's the bloody point? What's the point?
Oh, look, I'm just taking that as an example.
But it's a fair.
I'm taking that purely as an example because if you want to take it to its nth degree, we finish first, they finish last, and it's only a one position slide. So, deal in giving our first away next year at all. So, really, was just for the sake of the argument. We don't know. I mean, Essendon and Brisbane may improve. You don't know what's going to happen next year. Gibbs is a huge loss for them, and so they may fall away a little bit. They're not expected to challenge for 2 or 3 years yet.
Yeah, but you couldn't see them falling below the last couple.
If we finish first and they finish third last or fourth last, then what is it? What, a 4 or 5, position difference in the draft?
Well, the issue, if you look at the draft next year, and I haven't looked at it really closely, but they're talking basically that it's a key position player draft, whereas this year's a midfielders draft. And one of my main bugbears has been that we're missing out on some young midfield talent dropping out of the first round this year. But as it stands at the moment, the projection for the draft next year is that basically you've got a top 10 and then it's bugger all. So saying that it's just a couple of spots down the ladder in terms of the draft selections, it's more about what your strategy is, in my view. It's not. It's like, what's your strategy?
Mate, their strategy could be to trade back into that position next year. Who knows? But the thing is that the old famous saying from Gucci, which was that quality is remembered long after price is forgotten.
Who said that?
How about that one?
Hello?
What happened there?
Have we lost Pete?
We had gremlins. Did you hear my great saying?
Yeah, something about class and remembering.
Quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. So, how they approach the draft next year, because there's another trade period in between now and then.
And we've talked for about how long on this one issue, round and round in circles. We should probably have a little bit of chat about some of the others that have gone on. And I found it quite interesting in that on Trade Radio, where they have raised interest in a few of our players have been mooted as being part of this particular one. And so they've actually called up managers. And the upshot seems to be that none of our guys want to leave, which makes it really hard to trade when you've got players who are under contract, who might have some currency, but they're going, nah.
Well, that's the problem that you get when you're managing a list.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe those. Henderson, people could have had him for free, and I know that, he's not the ants pants, but when you're getting something for nothing, I would have thought that some team would have taken Henderson on.
I think there was a really good point raised about that, in that teams who have shown interest in him before, like Collingwood, etc., they've already got free agents in, or they've lost ones. So if they then bring in Henderson, it means they lose compensation pick. So don't bid on him. Let him go. Pick him up as, if we delist him, then they can pick him up for a lot cheaper.
Although Collingwood have already lost their compensation pick.
Oh, can we talk about how pathetic Collingwood's trading is, or ridiculous?
Oh, well, he's lost the pot, that guy, hasn't he? He's just trying to save his job, I think.
I mean, if you want to talk about ridiculous trades, Maine, seriously.
Well, again, you can't understand the strategy of that club. They're just all over the shop in terms of what they're trying to bring in. You have no idea, and it's not even the strategy; it's the quality, the players, and what they're prepared to pay for them. It's just ridiculous.
And I love this. PJ's actually pointed out, and I was going to mention this shortly, that Port put Tom Jonas up for trade apparently like 5 days ago. They've now re-signed him for 3 years.
Yeah, and called it a triumph.
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely some teams that I think are losing this trade so far. I actually think we'll probably end up with maybe Freo and Saints by the end. We'll look back next week and think Freo and the Saints have done quite well. Hawthorn's going to be a little bit interesting as to how you consider that, because I think they've created a bit of bad blood, particularly with their members, and the whole idea of the family club. Well, it's just proved that they're not really. They're an AFL club like everybody else.
I don't think that at all, actually. I think they've spun that particularly well. And Lewis and Mitchell have assisted them in spinning it well, because on both occasions, I don't know whether you heard Lewis talking today, but there's absolutely no animosity on the surface, certainly from his perspective, in terms of what's gone down. He talks glowingly about the matter-of-fact way in which Clarkson spoke with him. He wasn't happy with Clarkson's point of view, but by the same token, there was no animosity. He understood that Clarkson had a job to do. And at the end of the day, he's always going to consider himself a 3-time Hawthorn Premiership player. And when you talk about list management strategies, Hawthorn have nailed it in terms of understanding where their regeneration has to come from. You know, who would have thought that a team that has just won 3 flags and still finished respectably this year could trade in 2 absolute gun midfielders, potentially, at the expense of 2 club legends. I mean, it's a very gutsy move. Could you imagine Adelaide doing that?
No, never.
Well, for me, the interesting part about it is there seems to be a little bit of a strong rumour going around that Sydney are going to come in and cut Hawthorn's lunch regarding O'Meara.
They haven't got the cap space to do that.
Well,
they haven't. Nick, they've got 800,000 to pay Heaney next year. They've got no room.
Yeah, but who are they going to get rid of? Because Gold Coast want players. Hawthorn don't have. Hawthorn, it seems, have tried to get players to go up there. None are interested in going to Gold Coast because why would you? And so they've got these picks, but Gold Coast don't want picks. And the rumour is Tippett. Yeah. Sydney are going to get rid of him. Which I would, if it did happen, it'd be hilarious. Because he finally ends up back home. He's taken the Scenic via Sydney as somebody actually called it on the board.
I reckon Tippett is their get-out-of-jail-free card for Isaac Heaney next year.
He's going to be.
I don't think they'll do Tippett for O'Meara. They don't really need O'Meara, to be honest with you. I think Hawthorn will probably try and get another club involved, and that's probably been the hold-up a little bit, and I think there is a bit of a logjam in some of these trades, and I think it's Hawthorn trying to get other clubs involved in this trade for O'Meara, and as you rightly point out, for picks, for players, I should say, and perhaps that's where we can get involved in terms of Jared Lyons, and trying to fold that into the Gibbs situation. I would be much happier if we were able to engineer a situation where Carlton get better than 13 by way of a 3 or a 4-way mega deal, which there's an opportunity for us to do something with Gold Coast to manufacture that.
Yeah, I've kind of wondered that that's what we're sitting and waiting for to see what's going to happen. I think the O'Meara and the Prestia ones are actually holding up a lot of other deals. We know, what is it, Cloak to Western Bulldogs? That's always been mooted well and truly out. Nobody's said a peep about that one occurring. You've got Hibbard as well, who's on the move. That was well known beforehand. Still hasn't occurred. So I think you're right that the Prestia and the O'Meara ones are just hanging around.
Yeah, well,
and then everything's just going to fall into place.
Yeah, well, considering Hawthorn
no doubt it's going to be a dominoes effect.
Yeah, well, Hawthorn got the Mitchell and the Lewis ones done pretty quick, smart. So they don't mess around. So, I would imagine that they're trying to get other clubs involved. And I reckon the one that's going to hold everything up is bloody Richmond because they're hopeless. And it wouldn't surprise me if they actually miss out on Prestia in the end. Someone today was saying that they expect Cloak to be done late, so I don't think that's really going to be a problem. I don't think the Hibbard one's going to be a problem, but it's the 2 Gold Coast ones that are going to be a problem, and it's because Gold Coast have got 648,000 picks, so everyone sort of wants a piece of that action.
And Lyons has apparently indicated that Gold Coast is his club of choice, finally, and I don't know why it's taken Lyons so long.
Where did that get released, Mac? I haven't seen that one.
Oh God! When you read so much crap, you can't remember where you got it from. But that's
it's not official.
That was definitely not.
That was a
official.
Report.
It was a report by somebody who said that they believe. I suppose it's the old believe situation again. They believe that Lyons has chosen the Gold Coast, but I can't understand. There's something in play there, and I don't quite understand why he's taking so long.
Well,
it's the
obvious.
Picks we want back.
I think it's obvious. I think we're trying to manufacture something that helps Hawthorn get O'Meara over the line and helps us in terms of not having to spend anything other than one pick for Gibbs. And if we can somehow get something above 13 or get something in the second round that's going to satisfy Carlton, then maybe that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, Pete mentioned last week and mentioned in one of his trade articles that Gold Coast was going to be Lions home, and that was 2 or 3 weeks ago, wasn't it, Pete? So that's no surprise to us.
And the other one I'd like to mention very quickly is Mackay. You know, there was this, the old stories that there were 3 clubs out there that were interested in Mackay's services. We should get a gun and make these people sign him up.
No, I think it was Williamstown, St Mary's in the Northern Territory, and maybe Peel Thunder.
Yeah, I thought it was Pembroke Old Scholars, actually. Anyway,
no disrespect to DMAC, but
he
doesn't have value anymore.
I was being slightly facetious. But
fair enough, Mackie, to bring that one up.
But I'd love to load his 400k contract, that's all.
Be nice, wouldn't it? Guys, as we move towards the end of another rip-roaring Tuesday Night Live, we probably should let Nikki have a look at who just might round themselves up to be the cock-wobbling number of the week.
I'm playing the music.
Tell me when it's over.
The music we can't hear.
Shut up, Macca.
Underground, overground, wobbling free.
Righto, Macca. Righto, Nikki, go away.
That's so professional. So we've definitely got the AFL for the stupidity regarding the Jobe Watson. See, now I've got a mental blank because I didn't have my cock-wobbling number up music, which I like to, bop along to.
Seriously?
Yes, seriously. Gets me in the mood.
Well, Nikki,
wow. There's a revelation. That music gets
for this award.
Get the music on.
I think anybody, all the idiots on the board who nominated, we should trade McKay or Douglas, they have no value. It's not going to happen. Twats.
I reckon PJ's got the one there. Tony Sheehan
and the trade whisperer on the Twitter, who kind of outed himself but didn't really mean to.
Yeah, because he posted He posted on his personal account, the idiot.
Yeah, and using his same style of writing everything else, and he. No, Tony, it's you. Shut up.
I'd also like to nominate all the big footy posters who, after 25 mentions, still didn't cotton onto the fact that Scorpus is actually AFL Trade League.
Yes.
That is fantastic, isn't it?
That is hilarious.
That's actually been one of the funniest things that have gone on through this whole trade period, I have to say. It's fantastic work.
Talk about a social experiment. It was fantastic. Scorpus just started up that account and started just writing shit. And
how many followers has he got? Do we know how many followers?
Well, he's got more than us.
That's up to tonight, he did. You've just blown that. But I'd like to nominate the advertiser for the ridiculous, about 3-page coverage of something that happened over a year ago, and it's been exonerated by the AFL. That advertiser is
tabloid.
It's become it's become a Crows bashing paper lately.
Well, it's the Herald Sun. So it came out from Melbourne. So it was somebody in the AFL who's likely to leak this, or they've been sitting on it for a year and have only just now going, there's not much happening in trade week. Let's get this out and, throw a few things under the bus. That was absolutely disgusting. But well done to the Bulldogs for their statement that they made regarding it. Because initially we actually all jumped up and down because we thought the Bulldogs were behind it, but they were very much not happy with it being aired once again. I mean, they've just won a premiership. They've kind of moved on.
That was the point.
So have we got? Can I pop in with my nomination?
And then,
AFL, I'm with you, Nikki. AFL, disgraceful asking those two guys to write in for their Brownlow. Sorry, that's my nomination.
Yeah, I'd second that.
I've got 2 for you. So
Yep.
the first one, I'm going for the AFL as well for allowing the Hawks to trade Mitchell for nothing, Lewis for close to nothing, and the extremely uneven pick swap with St Kilda.
Good one.
And the second one, I'm going outside of AFL and saying Nick Kyrgios.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
oh. He would win it for the year.
Well, he's a perennial winner on SEN in the
Oh,
mornings.
yeah.
What's his name? Patrick Smith does some award, Goose and Goose or something or other. And you're not allowed to actually nominate Nick Kyrgios anymore because otherwise he'd just win it every week.
Well, that's why I've actually kind of avoided Rucci up until last week.
And if you want, like, the reverse cock-wombling numbnut of the week award has to go to Tim Cahill, because if ever there was an out-and-out champion, he just wanders back into the A-League, just, rocks up
goal.
and in his first game kicks probably the best goal ever kicked in the A-League, just to say, "Oh, I'm here now." I mean, the man is a freak, and if you want a definition of a champion, Tim Cahill is a champion. I'm not a big soccer follower, but I admire that guy simply because he walks the walk every time.
That was brilliant, wasn't it?
Right, so Nikki, do we have a winner for the week?
I think I'll go with you, Pete. That's got to be the AFL for the just hedging the bets on the stupid Job Watson thing. It was just ridiculous.
Inability to take responsibility.
Yeah, they need to throw a set of balls.
They were horrendous. Do we need to wait for some music, Phoenix?
No, I've done that.
That's all done. So, all right, I think we'll probably wrap it up there. We're just approaching the hour mark. It's been great to have everybody with us, and thanks for all of your comments. PJ Crows was on the chat there. It was good to have him along. And actually, I noticed he said just at the end there that AFL Trade Leaks was actually quoted by Trade Radio. So that is just how ridiculously far that social experiment has gone. And Scorpus,
That is brilliant.
I think we need to get him on and interview him next week, actually, as being and outing himself as AFL Trade Leaks. He's been absolutely legendary, and I've loved. He's been the story and the highlight of Trade Week for me. I've loved it. All right, thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it. Phoenix, you just want to run through all of our call signs because you seem to have it at your fingertips there.
Oh, yeah. So don't forget to like us on Facebook, AFL Crowcast. Follow us on Twitter, also AFL Crowcast. For those who like a bit of a read, crowsfancentral.com is going pretty well. Just a reminder too that you can listen to our podcasts via Facebook now. So if you go to our Facebook page and you click on Listen Now, it actually gives you a window into our podcast page, so you can listen to us there. And we'll be developing that interface over the coming weeks and months. What else? Where else can you like us? You can give us an iTunes review if you like, for those people that listen to us on iTunes. And yeah, as usual, we just thank everyone for their support. We've really noticed quite a steady growth in listenership and readership on the site, so that's really encouraging and spurs us along.
And if you miss out on any of that, Pete will continually spam his articles for you.
That's right, yeah. You can get me on Twitter at Peter J. Crows and also on crowsfancentral.com for some of the articles that we write there. All right,
we like to call it targeted advertising, don't we, Pete?
We do.
What was it? 6 posts yesterday?
Well, it's got to be done. We've got to get it
Two
out there.
threads.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing how many people have commented that it's nice to get some balanced coverage, and that's been our aim. All jokes aside, that's been the aim of Crows Fan Central, to actually try and cut through all the crap that we get on the Adelaide Crows from the local media and the lack of insight we get from the national media. And it's nice that we're starting to get some feedback that seems to acknowledge that. So, that's the aim, and if we can provide a bit of balanced coverage and a bit of, decent coverage, then we're achieving what we set out to do.
Beautiful, thanks, mate. All right, guys, Dan, Nikki, Macca, thanks very much for your participation tonight. Great to have you along as always. And to everybody, we'll catch you again next Tuesday for Tuesday Night Live.
Farewell.
Night all.
See ya!
See ya.